Starstruck.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Joyride. What's going on, Adam?
Hey, it's another sunny summer day out there. It's under 100, so we're doing better this time.
The last time we did this, it felt kind of like the beginning of Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah, to say the least.
Okay, so before we really get into the main script here, I have a small story I want to tell you beforehand. We're going to call this a mini Joyride, okay? And this actually happened on my way to our recording session. So, left the house, it's early morning, okay? I don't eat a lot of fast food, but I was like, you know what sounds really good right now is a sausage egg McMuffin. So I was going to grab you one too. So I pull in there at the McDonald's, and there's not a lot of cars, but it's moving really slow. Now, I'm a pretty chill guy, so it didn't really bother me. I just sat there. I left early. I know I was going to get to our session in time. And finally, I get up to the menu, and this person who's working there, zero personality, okay, obviously really, really does not want to be at work today. And eventually I go, and then he goes, okay, well, what would you like? And I'll take 2 sausage egg McMuffins. He goes, oh, we're not doing breakfast. Like, and I'm thinking to myself, I was like, it's the morning. Why?
Where's the cutoff?
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, well, okay. Well, let me think here. He goes, okay, I suppose you can take your time. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, and eventually I just gave up. I just went just 2 hamburgers. Okay. And then he's like, okay. And so I get up there. The guy looks as boring as his voice, I'd like to point out. It takes another 10 minutes, no joke, from the pay window to the pickup window, and there's only 2 cars in front of me. So this whole thing, I've sat there for 20 minutes, dealt with crappy service, didn't get breakfast. I now know kind of what Michael Douglas felt like in falling down. Not that I'm justifying his actions, but I kind of get it now.
It gives you an inkling of what built him up to that breaking point in that movie, that was one of the most, I think, if not the most recognizable, iconic scenes of falling down. Yeah.
Anyway, the rest of the drive went great. So that was it was a very, very good mini Joyride, other than the burger incident.
Well, thankfully you made it the rest of the way, and you're not stuck out there with
No.
SWAT team on you.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, burgers aside. Okay, are you ready for our main story for the day?
Let's hit it.
Okay, open up the script here. All right, so the little hint I gave last time is this is going to be a very early automobile. It's not a Model T. All right.
Okay.
The dawn of the automotive industry would not begin easily. It would take years of hard work and determination, along with plenty of strifes and struggles that would all come with the ride. There had been many early attempts to build a self-moving vehicle, but it would take a brilliant inventor and his daring wife to work together in order to build the world's first automobile. On the 25th of November, 1841, Carl Friedrich Benz was born in the town of Mühlberg in what is currently the German state of Brandenburg. Now, there's going to be a lot of German in here, which I'm going to completely probably butcher, so no, don't get mad at me, please.
I'll try not to with my German heritage.
Okay.
I'll set it aside.
Thank you, I appreciate that. As a youth, Carl was not interested in the typical licentious pastimes of most young men, but was instead fascinated by the art of locksmithing.
Interesting.
he's like, hey, you want to go out to the bar tonight with the boys? No, I'm just gonna play with my lock set.
Forget that. I got more entertaining things to do.
Being interested in mechanical things in general, he eventually attended the University of Karlsruhe to study engineering. After graduating from university, he found a job designing scales for a man named Karl Scheineck. The scales are like for weight.
Okay.
Yep. As important as weighing equipment may be to the world of commerce, Karl soon began to become bored with this work. The next phase of his career would be working as an engineer for a bridge building company owned by the Beckninsker brothers, but even something as sturdy as the bridge business was not enough for the fledgling inventor. As Karl was looking for a new avenue in his professional life, his personal life was also about to get much better. During this period, Karl would meet a girl who would eventually become his wife, Cecile Bertha Ringer, better known as Bertha. Now, if you look up a picture of Bertha Benz, she does not look like a Bertha.
Not the rounded, I guess, shape you would imagine naturally, especially for the era.
Yeah. After getting engaged with Bertha, Karl began a business partnership with August Ritter. They formed a company called Gas Motoren Fabrik Mannheim. That rolls off the tongue.
It does.
Ritter would prove to be a bad business partner, and Bertha had to dip into her dowry in order to buy out Ritter's shares of the company. The shenanigans of Ritter would not be a major setback, however. At this time, Karl had completed one of his first major accomplishments. The invention itself was a two-stroke internal combustion engine. He received a patent for it on June 28, 1880. Karl originally wanted to build a four-stroke engine, but discovered he had been beat to the punch a few years earlier by a rival inventor, Nicholas August Otto, who had been granted a patent for a four-stroke engine in 1877. Now, the engines they were both building were used to power different kinds of machinery for a multitude of different industries. So they hadn't thought of fitting it to a vehicle or a carriage yet. So it's powering like looms and that kind of thing.
Sure,
is what they're working on.
Yep, stationary equipment, things like that. Yeah.
Karl took on more partners to help find more financing for his company. One of his new partners was a local photographer named Emil Bueller, and Emil's brother would also join the company. Karl worked on building the engines, and Emil took care of the sales side of the business. These two employees would prove to be valuable assets to the workshop, but Karl would also bring another partner on board, Otto Schmuck.
Interesting last name. I guess back then, maybe not funny, but needless to say, we know what we're thinking.
In German, I don't know if you pronounce it different, but at least in English, it just looks like Schmuck. Otto would prove to be an unreliable partner by regularly spending far more money than he should have, which of course caused the company financial problems. So Schmuck was an appropriate name for him. They would end up having to go to various banks in Mannheim to acquire more capital. The relationship between Karl and his other main investors began to worsen when he told them he wanted to build a horseless carriage that was going to be powered by his stationary engine. The board and the investors and all his partners thought that a horseless carriage was impossible and that Karl, quote, was insane.
How dare you think of something outside of those living beasts that transport us reliably and have for many years?
Well, I think Henry Ford said if I would have gave people what they wanted, I just would have gave them faster horses.
Yeah, sure, back then. And they would have been happy.
Yeah. Karl did not take this kindly, and in 1883 he left Gas Motoren Fabrik Mannheim.
What a name.
Things were not good for him at this time. And he even said, quote, "During those days when disaster struck on the sea of life, only one person was waiting on my side. That was my wife. Fearless and courageous, she hosted up new sails of hope."
Well, good to have the inspiration there.
That's a lot much better than the text messages you send your sweetheart now, I think.
Oh, my gosh. Worlds away from where we're at today.
Thankfully, Karl would find hope again when he revisited an old hobby of his, cycling. This brought him to a bicycle repair shop owned by Mask Kesper Rose, Max Kasparov and Frederick Wilhelm Eblinger. Now, I love how the first guy has a relatively normal name and the second guy is horribly German. Max Kasparov, Frederick Wilhelm Eblinger.
Exactly.
Okay, the three of them together would eventually form a new company. You ready for this one?
Ready for it.
Called Benz and Company Rheinschei Gas Motoren Fabrik.
Whoa. That's a mouthful.
Better known as Benz and Company.
You know, when they couldn't figure out what to say, they just said it all, I guess.
It's like those it's like those old books, like those nonfiction books like scholars would write, or even just like snake oil salesman, I guess it doesn't really matter, but like in the 1880s, they have these long titles. You ever notice that?
Yes, that's true.
It's like the theories of wind, colon, and the different prepositions and propositions of air velocity. And it just keeps going and going and going.
Yep.
Man. I guess they just had time for that back then. I don't know. Once again, the main product on offer were Carl's stationary engines. Despite the negative opinions of his past investors, the dream of a horseless carriage was still on his mind. There was one problem, however. His stationary engines were extremely heavy, which meant it was not practical to power an apparatus that was intended to be continually on the move. The inspiration for this problem unexpectedly came from a fire in Mannheim. The fire was started when a bowl of benzine was ignited by a wayward spark. Benzine is a chemical solution that was used to remove stains from gloves, but as the fire had proven, it was also highly flammable when not used responsibly.
Oh, discovery by accident.
Mm-hmm. Carl thought benzene would be a key to making his engines more practical if you can control the veracity of its explosive nature. With this new spark of creativity, he got to work and was more determined than ever. As a way of controlling the explosion, Carl invented the Trembler coil system that used a spark plug, which he'd also just invented.
Oh, interesting.
Now, for those who are not very familiar with how internal combustion engines work, what does that spark plug do, Adam?
So that spark plug essentially just transfers the energy produced by the distributor and or ignition coil combination, or magneto, for that matter. So where the spark is produced, it transfers it into the combustion chamber to ignite the air-fuel mixture, is what it does.
And then that explosion pushes the piston down, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that explosion then pushes the piston down, which is your power stroke out of your four-stroke engine.
Yep. And so that's where the stroke comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he also later, and kind of during this period, Mercedes, the company and whatnot, they also basically developed the carburetor. And a lot of cars don't use carburetors anymore; they're electrically fuel injected. But what would the carburetor do?
So the carburetor, it actually operates off the four-stroke cycle. So as we just explained, the power stroke, which is produced when the spark plug ignites, before that, when the intake stroke takes place, that produces vacuum. And the carburetor has what is called the Venturian side. And when that intake stroke produces vacuum, it then moves the air-fuel mixture through, because it actually contains fuel in the carb itself, and then sucks outside air in, causing that air fuel mixture to be brought in the combustion chamber, and then boom, brought up and ignited.
It's all right. That's perfect. So we got to think of a name for this section. I know it all with Adam. I don't know.
We'll figure something out.
All right. At the same time, Gottlieb Daimler and Wilhelm Maybach were also working on motor cars of their own in Germany. Oddly enough, none of them were aware of each other.
Wow.
I know, right?
I guess that's another point of this, how transparent everything is today, where, everything just, information travels so fast, these guys were oblivious to their existence. Yeah.
Well, I guess, a kind of more contemporary or more recent one you can compare it to is kind of like Apple and Microsoft.
Oh, yeah.
About, mid-70s, you got Bill Gates and Paul Allen and Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. They're both working on some type of new personal computer, which basically doesn't really exist at this point. Totally unaware of each other, and they're doing it in completely different ways on top of it, One of the more troubling decisions that Carl had to make was whether his car should have 3 wheels or 4 wheels.
Oh, yeah, because of the carriage designs back in the day.
Mhm. After careful thought, he settled on 3 wheels. He came to this decision because one less wheel would make the car lighter and easier to steer. He'd also invent his own tiller system to steer the car. Now, I love how that he thinks is great because it was like, what, the Reliant Robins, you know what I'm talking about? Those things are notorious for always rolling.
Oh, well, that, and you think back to the early 1983 Honda 3-wheelers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the design.
Yeah, you got to put the wheel in the back. You know what they did? What Bombardier did with that Can-Am thing?
Yes, yes.
Which basically, a callback to our last episode, that thing's just basically a snowmobile with wheels. When you look at it,
It is, but it's just kind of wild to see those. But they work.
Yeah.
The design works. Yeah.
With the wheel and steering system in place, the power plant, of course, was the next major step to make the car a reality. Times had changed in the engineering world, and he was now able to use a 4-stroke engine that used his revolutionary ignition system. The engine would sport the ferocious output of 0.9 horsepower, so not even a whole horse. So like a horse with 3 legs.
It really makes you think on, again, when this stuff was just first being developed. I mean, what 1 horsepower really is and how much power that is. What 1 horse could do and how we base everything today. Yeah.
This gave it the blistering top speed of 10 miles per hour.
Ooh, man. Hold on to your hat.
Well, I guess beats walking is.
Well, yeah, and you think back then. I mean, how primitive, roadways were, dirt paths. I mean, it's not. We take a lot for granted today. How developed we are.
To add to all of this excitement, it only had 1 gear. With all the important concepts and innovation in place, testing would begin at the Benz workshop. The initial trials actually went very well until the drive chain snapped. Once the drivetrain was fixed, they set out again for another round of tests. On the next occasion, Carl would have Bertha sitting next to him as one of his assistants spun the flywheel in order to start the car. The engine exploded to life, and Carl and Bertha were off. The car was cruising at an exciting pace, and all was going well until they slammed into the brick wall of the workshop.
Oh, my gosh. Forgot about brakes.
That's probably exactly. Oh,
Gosh.
damn it, I forgot the brakes.
Well, and it's quite the, you try to put an image there tied to, someone having to physically grab a flywheel and turn that and let go, because that was an issue back, we're talking back to the old crank days with the Model T, is there was a lot of accidents where people did not let go of that crank in time.
Break arms and stuff.
Break arms, wrists,
Oof. And, this is the other thing I was thinking when I was writing this, is that since this is technically the first car, this is the first car accident.
That's a good point. Yeah. That would be, and how appropriate with the setting, right?
Yeah, exactly. The wall incident proved the engine was doing its job, but there was one other small problem, and no, it was not the brakes. Carl had yet to fit a fuel tank to his car.
Oh, wow.
So, how did they manage to conduct their testing? Carl enlisted one of his sons to run alongside the vehicle as he poured fuel into the engine so it did not stop running.
Try to put that image in your head. I mean, and back in that era.
Okay, first of all, child labor laws. That never happened. But you have, I don't know how old his son was at the time. Let's just say 9. He's got this 9-year-old kid running along this exploding thing with this very explosive liquid. Pouring it in by hand.
Well, and we automatically think of all the safety hazards associated with that, but that was so new back then. They didn't make those connections because, you hadn't played around or experimented with that stuff.
No, I'm not saying they're being reckless. I just, it's just amazing.
Oh, it is. Absolutely amazing.
As development continued, a fuel tank was added, and the car was now fully functioning. Despite having an impressive prototype, Carl was apprehensive to put the car into production, even though it had been approved for a patent on January 29, 1886. It had gone through a considerable amount of testing, but all these tests were done outside of the workshop and not on actual roads. In order to give Carl a little more confidence in his invention, Bertha would take matters into her own hands. In 1888, Bertha left a note to Carl saying that she and the boys took the car to go see her parents, who lived in the town of Pforzheim.
Again, we're doing best as we can with the pronunciations.
I
Nonetheless, great, interesting name.
Yeah, there's probably some guy in Germany listening. You're not saying it right. Sorry.
Yeah, we'll have an entire section of comments, comment vlog separate from this broadcast, so you can express your concerns. Yeah.
The town was about 100 kilometers, or 60 miles for those who don't live in the civilized world, from the workshop. This would be the world's first joyride.
Wow.
The trip went relatively smooth, and Bertha only had to stop a few times to fix some minor problems. By early afternoon, her and the boys had reached Heidelberg and stopped to have a bite of lunch. I like how it's like it literally is. She's just going out for a jaunt, and she's doing something that's never been done before.
Yeah, I mean, and you think of how historic that is, but back then, I mean,
I don't know. Maybe she didn't realize what she was doing. I don't know.
Didn't, but it makes you really think. Yeah, in the moment.
They left the town of Heidelberg and continued on their way until Bertha realized the car was low on fuel. She pulled into Weislach, where she popped into a local pharmacy in order to purchase the stain remover that powered the engine. The pharmacy is considered to be the world's first fuel station.
Wow. And it really would be, you know? I mean, that's unknowingly.
There are only two other problems that occurred during her historic joyride. At one point, the fuel line had become blocked. Bertha fixed the problem by clearing out the line with her hairpin. With fuel traveling back to the engine, they continued on their way. Another mishap occurred when the brake belt failed. She quickly fixed this with a piece of leather she acquired in the town of Boschloft. So she's MacGyvering.
She is already.
Yeah.
I mean, that's impressive. I mean, you have a brand new invention, essentially, and you're already being intuitive and creative on ways to repair it on the go.
Mm-hmm. Aside from all this, at one point the ignition wire short-circuited while driving. Bertha pulled the car over again and assessed the problem. With some quick thinking, she fixed the ignition wire by tearing up her garters so the wire would become functional again.
Oh,
so she fixed the car with her lingerie, essentially.
Again, another interesting fact, and not to get technical again, but with electrical and how electricity works, it goes with the path of least resistance. So she provided some of the first insulators then,
basically.
Yeah, to keep that under control and the spark going where it should.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we can think, we have modern ignition systems thanks to underwear.
In one form, yes. I mean, that's crazy to think about that, but there we go.
Or something of that variety. By the end of the day, they would reach their destination. Bertha would later write that, "Father was so happy and we had finally achieved our goal." By going on this adventure, Bertha and her sons had completed the world's first road trip in a car. More importantly, she's considered to be the first female driver in the world.
Wow. And the era, you think back then, how common it was to see a woman behind controls of a, stagecoach or a carriage. I mean, sure, it happens, especially on a small farm when the wife had to go in and get supplies. But in a city setting, or generally speaking, I mean, it was typically a male.
Well, yeah, that's the sad thing, is that women did things back then, but history just kind of glossed over it, and they got forgotten. We're just now really discovering this again. And what's really sad, you only really discover it when it's like this, when you're actually really digging for information.
Yeah, and that's a terrible thing. It's too bad it wasn't more transparent the way information's been presented in the past.
It was not for her daring and resourceful exploit. The automobile, as we may know, it may have never become a common reality. The most eventful part of the trip was when a crowd of people who had been watching the car approach from a distance swarmed Bertha and the boys when they stopped. These were literally the first people in the world to see a car driving on regular roads. Only horses had been seen before that point. So it's like a spaceship coming through, essentially.
Just about, or some type of witchcraft or voodoo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, probably. Yeah. After Bertha had proved her husband's invention did have real-world potential, he set to work again and produced an improved third version of the car via Bertha's suggestions from her drive. With most of the engineering solved, the next hurdle would be marketing. It was hard to convince people they no longer needed to rely off horses. The fuel needed to use horses was readily available, that being hay and water. Benzene was not.
Yeah, I mean, you think about that. How much of a gap there is between pharmacies, depending on your road of travel back then. I mean, few and far between, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Imagine if we still went to the pharmacy to get gas. Hey, can you get me my prescription and some gasoline?
Yeah. Can you just fill up the jug for me here? I brought my empty with me.
To help boost sales, the car was presented at the Munich Engineering Exposition. Carl would end up winning an award for his invention. Unfortunately, this did not help improve sales. Things would improve when the car was showcased at the Paris equivalent of the Munich show. The fashionable French were fascinated with this new machine and thought there could be a future in the motor carriage. By 1892, a dozen Benz cars had been sold, and the company now had 430 employees. Sales began to pick up. Only 25 three-wheeled cars were built before Carl decided to switch to a four-wheel design. The model that followed the original car, the Velo, is considered to be the world's first production car. 1,200 in total were produced, and it would be entered into the world's first automobile race in 1894, the Paris to Rhone.
Oh, wow.
And those races, that's a whole episode on itself.
Absolutely. I was just going to say that's a trigger right there. We could talk a lot about that.
Yeah, but literally, they're racing on open roads with traffic.
Yeah. God. That will be another episode.
Yeah. The Benz company would continue to thrive for the next 2 decades until the Great Depression struck Germany. The nation had just lost the First World War, and an economic depression was the last thing anyone wanted. With financial problems growing, the Benz company had to merge with Daimler and Maybach. The company would eventually take on a customer named Emil Jenick, Jelnick, maybe is how they pronounce it, who was a wealthy businessman who had many friends in high places, including the Rothschild family.
Oh.
When the company produced an exceptionally powerful 35 horsepower model designed by William Maybach and Paul Daimler, Jelnick requested the car be named after his daughter, Mercedes.
Of course. Here we go.
And that, as they say, the rest is history.
Well, it's just, it's amazing, just the story in itself. It's amazing the evolution of the names and how that changed on its own. I mean, that's always some of the most fascinating features.
And yeah, Mercedes-Benz, which is it Daimler now? Is that their official? Or are they Mercedes-Benz? I know they're changing their name again, or were, yeah, but that is the oldest car company, plain and simple, because of this. But if you trace the history back, yeah.
Yeah, and you think about after they had established things and started production, how many other people in the relative area started jumping on. I mean, again, that's another show on its own, but they were the first. I mean, they were truly the first to make some of these breakthroughs.
All right, and I wrote down some other interesting facts on this too. None of the production models of the Benz Patent-Motorwagen survive. They're all dead. None of them. There's none left.
Oh wow!
So any you do see, like in TV, or if you're lucky enough to see something in a museum, it's a replica.
That's, again, that's terrible with some of that stuff.
I've written down here all examples are replicas, including even the ones they put on display at the Mercedes headquarters.
Oh, wow.
So kind of sad. Cost of the car. Not a lot of records were kept, but it may have cost about $1,000. When you adjust everything, which is about $26,000 in today's money.
Okay.
So that's a lot of money for basically what was kind of a toy back then, but not as much as I thought it would be.
Yeah, I actually would have thought a little bit more. I mean, making it more out of the reach of the, I guess, for what it's worth. This is a loose term, the middle class of that day, if there was such a thing. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it wasn't completely just nothing but the upper class creme de la creme, that could afford such a invention.
Now, the Benz Motorwagen is considered the first car by most, automotive historians, but there were other things vehicles that preceded it. The first self-propelled vehicle was created by a Frenchman who was Nicolas Joseph Cugnot It was a steam-powered vehicle that was completed in 1769 for the French military. I think they used it to carry cannons.
Oh, that would make sense. Yeah, especially larger, heavier, artillery. Yeah.
Why we don't really hear about that a lot, even though it was the first vehicle, essentially. It was so heavy that it was not practical for everyday use. It was just a huge tractor tank,
Oh my
basically.
gosh. Yeah.
Now, this I found interesting. In 1881, the first electric-powered vehicle was introduced. It was invented by Frenchman Gustave Trouvé when he took an electric motor developed by Siemens and installed it in a tricycle built by Englishman James Starley. Why isn't that not considered the first car, was what I was wondering.
Yeah, that throws you for a loop thinking about that.
Back then, it's electric.
They don't even acknowledge it. Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah. Gosh.
Well, that's making a comeback, so maybe that guy will become more known in the future. So.
You would think.
Yeah.
Especially as we develop more and more and look back for the origins of this tech.
But on to, more directly with modern Mercedes. This is just my opinion. But I never thought Mercedes made an ugly car. But for the longest time, I never thought they made a pretty car.
They kind of fall right in between in a lot of ways. And especially, even going back over the eras where you had some of the big, more grandiose front ends and, the rounded designs, especially of the 1950s with the SL series. It's kind of one of those that, I don't know. I mean, when you get to current day, it's so radically different, but when you think about the eras that we're talking about and even postmodern era, pre-modern, it's just, kind of falls in between.
Yeah, I've always been more of a Jag man, that I had one. But I really like these new Mercedes. I think they look great. I think it was before the pandemic. I went to the Portland Auto Show. I actually sat and it was just like the C-Class. It was the smallest one. But the interior was gorgeous, too. I mean, I don't know. It's this is my opinion once again, but it's a vast improvement over what it used to be.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it comes with the materials. They figured out how to make consistent quality. Where back in the day, again, you look at the 1980s, and even with Mercedes, I mean, it was expensive. It was the quality of the time, but it just didn't last, and some of it didn't hold up, even in its era. I mean, some of the leathers and just again, materials. Everything's gotten a lot better in a lot of ways, and it's nice to see manufacturers that take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever driven one?
Yes, I have. I've driven a number of Mercedes. In fact, my folks, my mom was big into them, and my dad was as well. Some of the 300D series from the early 1980s. My dad was really big in the Mercedes diesel cars. He was a diesel guy, though, so I mean, he always liked the mileage. And those were pretty dog. I mean, they only were around, I think it was like 65 horsepower, but the mileage was great back then. Of course, it was a diesel. I think they were getting upwards of like 40 miles a gallon, high 30s, low 40s at most. But no, I've also driven some of the 500 SL, famed series, the 500 SL series from the 1980s, which were their flagship car. You're looking at a car, back then that was, I think, around mid-50s is what those retailed for in the 1980s. And they're smooth. Even if you don't like the looks, they did ride very smooth, very stable, and you could see the appeal. I mean, especially back then. And the thing with Mercedes that's changed over time but stays consistent to an extent is the logo. You have that big Benz logo, and especially throughout certain areas like the 1950s and 1980s, it was very prominent. They had that right up front. You couldn't mistake it. So
my understanding of that logo too is that those 3 points of the star, it was supposed to represent the engines that were built for cars, ships, and airplanes.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
The 3 points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I've driven on a lot of things, Jags, Porsches, I've driven just about quite a bit. But oddly enough, I've never driven a Mercedes, so I really need to add that to my list, especially after listening to this story. So.
Oh yeah, and I mean they talk about you look over the decades, especially from the 1950s spreading into the early 2000s. What a vast variety. I mean, you have everywhere from just a slow economy car that's comfortable and has its purpose to an absolute supercar. So.
I was having this spirited debate with a guy I know, and we were talking about if we could only choose one brand to buy from for the rest of your life. And he chose Nissan. Okay.
Interesting.
And then I said Mercedes. And he goes, why? I said, they make every single kind of wheeled vehicle you would ever need. They make everything from small commuter cars to big freight trucks and vans.
that is true. And they are still the manufacturer of those. It hasn't been outsourced like some of my favorite previous brands, Volvo, where they still make the big trucks. But anyways, that is a good point. Yeah. What a range.
All right. I think we're going to bring things to a close now, Adam. The hint for our next episode is it doesn't have wheels. It doesn't have skis. And it doesn't have wings.
Ooh. Well, that's got the wheels turning.
We're going to find out, right?
Or not so much the wheels turning. We'll see. We'll see next time.
All right. Once again, we're on Patreon. We appreciate your support. Please give us a good review. We like those. And we will catch you next time.
Next time we'll be there.
All right. Signing out.